Radio Kim, Inspirasi Infora Islami. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good afternoon to the dear listeners of IKIM FM. Welcome to another episode of Global Muslim Matters, your portal to the world of Muslim affairs across the globe. This show is a collaboration program between IKIM with International Institute of Advanced Islamic Studies, IAIS Malaysia. And for today, we are going to talk about Beyond the Battlefield, the Gaza crisis and its unintended consequences to Israel. And to talk about it, I have Dr. Ahmad Badri Abdullah. He is the Deputy CEO of IAIS Malaysia. Assalamualaikum, Doctor.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Patricia, for having me again.
It's such a pleasure to have you in the studio. Alhamdulillah. And how are you, Doctor?
Fine. Thank you. It's quite good today. Alhamdulillah.
It's quite good today. Alhamdulillah. And so Dr. Badri, listeners, okay, he is not, this is not the first time Dr. Badri being in the studio. Yeah. So if you missed the first episode of Global Muslim Matters, the speaker was Dr. Ahmad Badri. So you can watch the replay of the episode on our Facebook page, IKIM FM, and also our YouTube page, IK Media. And Dr. Badri, it's very interesting. Our topic for today, where we are going to talk about the consequences of Israel's action towards Gaza. And going to the first question of the interviews, our topic, just now you mentioned that it's unintended consequences, right? Yeah. So what does the term of unintended consequences mean? And how can this term serve as a useful framework for analysing the political situation between Palestine and the Israeli regime?
Thank you, Patricia, for the question, and thank you for having me again in this wonderful slot or session. The term unintended consequence or unintended consequences refer to the unexpected outcomes of a particular action or decision. The theory of unintended consequences is a fundamental concept in economics, social sciences, and has been discussed by various scholars throughout history. They are more prominent in two fields of research. Firstly is the complexity theory. It is a framework to understand complex systems such as the economy, the environment, the security system, and the society. And according to complexity theory, unintended consequences is an inherent feature of complex systems. This is because complex systems are characterized by many things like non-linear relationships, feedback loops, emergent properties, which can lead to unexpected outcomes. Complexity theories emphasizes that the importance of understanding the underlying dynamics of a system is in order to anticipate and manage those consequences. And the second field that whereby unintended consequence is quite prominent is in the system theory. In system theory, unintended consequences can arise from the interdependence of different parts of a system. For example, a change in a part of the system can have ripple effects throughout the system and leading to unintended consequences. So system theory emphasizes that the importance of understanding the interconnectedness between different parts of a system in order to anticipate and manage the unintended consequences that emanate from it. Unintended consequences in policymaking happen a lot. For an example, a classic case, we term it as the Cobra effect. The Cobra effect is an example of a situation when good intention lead to bad result. It happened. The term originated due to a historical event which happened in India during British rule. The government by that time paid people to kill cobras to reduce their numbers. At first, it worked, and the cobra sighting reduced their numbers.
I see.
And at first, but some of the citizens started breeding cobras for money because they are paid for catching cobras. When the government found out and that people start to breed cobras, the government stopped paying them anymore. They don't pay them anymore. And what happened that the breeders release the worthless snakes that they breed. So what happened at the end? This made the cobra problem even worse than before. So this is what we call as unexpected or unintended consequences out of certain decision or certain action that maybe have a good intention at the beginning. In the beginning. Okay, at the outset, I would like to enumerate some unintended consequences that could emanate from the Israelis' aggression or invasion on Gaza. Consequences that actually affected Israel significantly. So firstly, Israel might lose the land invasion battle. I will elaborate more after this. But at the outset, I would say that Israel might face challenges if it continues with land invasion for a few reasons. Firstly, there's no clear plan for how Israel would end this invasion, and experts worry it could turn into a very long and difficult war. This conflict might also draw in other countries in the region, making things more complicated for Israel and potentially lead to a loss. Past conflicts with the Hamas organization, which control the Gaza Strip, haven't resulted in complete success for Israel. In I think 2008, 2014, they don't really succeed that significantly. Moreover, a ground invasion could heavily impact civilians' life in Gaza, causing serious harm. Plus, some international allies like the United States are concerned that Israel might not achieve its goal or hold onto any gained territory in such a situation. Overall, a land invasion for Israel could lead to uncertainty, potential complication involving other countries, and a risk of not achieving their objective. Former U.S. Defense Advisor Mr. Douglas McGregor, who was also a senior military officer directly involved in leading armored units in the Gulf War, stated that Israel might face a situation similar to the Ukraine situation if the US and its ally underestimate the strength of Russia in Ukraine, in the Ukraine case, but in this case, if they underestimate the Hamas strength, and they might face the situation like in Ukraine. That is the first thing. Secondly, Israel is losing the support of the media journalists in the West and in social media, of course. We know that more than 350 journalists in the West are unhappy with how Western media covers the Palestine or it's like Israel's aggression in Gaza. They wrote a letter to point out problems like unfair reporting, especially the killing of journalists in Gaza, and how news often sides with only one group. The latest wants media companies to be responsible for what they say and to report the conflict fairly. They also ask journalists to use specific words like apartheid, genocide, to describe what's really happening on the ground. The goal is to make people more aware of the importance of reporting things accurately, and social media has become really important in showing what's really happening in the conflict. As we know, it lets regular people to share videos and live stream from Gaza that reveal the truth. These platforms are crucial because they help everyone to see the reality of the situation, like how about unarmed women and kids has been killed by the Israeli regime. And unlike Israel claim of attacks by Hamas without proof, social media shows the ongoing brutality, which is Israel keeps harming innocent people like women, children, and attacking hospitals. Thirdly, we have seen Western leaders, due to enormous public sentiments, seems to take side with the Palestinians, so as to not lose their public support. For instance, the case of the UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak fired the Home Secretary Suella Braverman because she caused she made a comment by saying that the London police were being too friendly to the Palestinian groups.
Yes.
And she claimed that they didn't stop the rally supporting Palestinian in London. And Braverman criticized the protester but the police didn't stop the rally because it wasn't against the law. Around 300,000 to 800,000 people protested, and making it one of the biggest rallies in the Great Britain history, causing disagreement in Sunak's government and leading to a reshuffle of his cabinet recently. In the opposition in the UK, some Labour Party branches closed and 9 politicians left because they weren't allowed to talk about condemning Gaza attacks. And both sides argued in Parliament, with some against Sunak and others supporting Israel. Even former Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn led a protest against Israel. Similar disagreement we have seen happen in the US, with supporters of both major parties, Democrat and Republicans, disagreeing with on Biden's supports on Israel's attack on Gaza, and other countries like we see Spain, Norway, Ireland, and some Latin America and African countries criticize Israel's action.
Yes.
And last but not least is the fact that very surprisingly, China, we can see that China stands to gain the most from this conflict. This is like an unexpected or unintended consequences of this phenomena. China strongly supports Palestinians because they see them as fellow victim of the past Western control in colonized land. They also see the Israeli aggressions in Gaza as a chance to increase their influence in the Middle East, competing with the United States. So China wants a two-state solution and talks about it more to position themselves as a mediator in this conflict. So by supporting Palestinians, China aims to gain more power in the Middle East and show support to other nations that also sympathize more with Palestinians than Israel. So that would be the the starting point of my of this discussion today.
Of the consequences
that
it has on Israel. And just now you mentioned that about the ground invasion, right? Given that Israel's aggression on Gaza has been going for more than a month as for now, with more the ground invasion initiated, it started 20 days ago. And in your opinion, I would like to ask your opinion, how has this extended duration of warfare and the recent introduction of these ground forces affected the overall security situation, and what are the key factors influencing the performance and outcomes of Israel's ground invasion in Gaza?
Okay, thank you. I think, as I mentioned just now, if the war prolonged, the Israel will face the situation that Ukraine is facing. So a prolonged war without a certain, without any certainty about how it will end. But Israel's difficulty in winning a land invasion in Gaza can be attributed to several factors. One of them is that Gaza's complicated urban layout makes it very hard for Israel to invade or target specific areas where they suspect Hamas or hostages might be hiding. Even though Israel defeated Hamas in previous conflict, not entirely, but it has proven that it is extremely challenging for them due to Hamas' resilience and the difficulty of controlling the region. Israel has fought, I think, 3 previous conflict with or war with Hamas in 2008, 2009, 2012, 2014, and launched limited land invasions during 2 of those campaigns. But unlike today, Israeli leaders never vowed to destroy Hamas once and for all. And Hamas has constructed an extensive underground tunnel system in Gaza. Some said it is more than 500 kilometers all over the Gaza Strip.
The underground tunnel.
Making it very difficult for Israeli airstrikes to effectively target these hidden structures. Tunnel warfare poses risks for soldiers and those potential hostages. And Israel lacks a clear plan for the future of Gaza, causing concern among foreign countries. While Israel can defeat Hamas militarily, they haven't aimed for a decisive victory due to the concern that maybe a more radical group might take over Gaza afterwards. So the Gaza Strip is as I say, the Gaza Strip is densely populated with people and buildings, making it challenging for the Israeli military force. And moving toward crowded areas increases the risk of harming civilians and getting stuck in urban settings. And the limited open space in Gaza restrict the Israeli forces' ability to maneuver freely, making it hard for them to use their usual tactics, bombing and so on and so forth. And Hamas fighters benefit from fighting in the crowded urban areas, and it gives them some protection, maybe even from against Israeli weapons.
In a way, they are more familiar with the place itself than the Israel's regime, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. They know the building, they know the
They
setup.
know it very well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Some also argue about the presence of booby traps hidden in buildings or in tunnel adds to the danger for Israeli soldiers. And moreover, Gaza has an intricate system of, as I mentioned, intricate system of tunnels, which has been a significant challenge for the Israel. And Hamas, more importantly, has had the time to get ready for this war, because they have prepared for many months.
Yes.
They are making warnings, and they have prepared and making it harder for the Israeli military to carry out their operation. And also, as I mentioned, Israel might have lack of complete knowledge about Hamas tunnel network, and making it more challenging for them to navigate and secure the area. In some, I think Israel's difficulty in winning the land invasion in Gaza can be attributed to Hamas control of Gaza, complex urban terrain, and difficulty in making sense of the complexity of the urban setting in Gaza. At home, this is also important. People are upset with the Israeli government for what they see as security failures during the recent attacks by Hamas in southern Israel on the 7th of October. Many don't put trust anymore in the Prime Minister Netanyahu leadership, with more people preferring the leader of another party like Benny Gantz. So there's criticism that the government hasn't done enough to help the many Israelis who were forced to leave their homes. I think now it amounted to 300,000 people need to vacate their homes due to the attacks. And trust in the government is at its lowest point in 20 years. I think maybe 21% for Benjamin Netanyahu. And most blame Netanyahu for not preventing the Hamas attack. And some politicians, of course, they are taking this time to call for Netanyahu to step down, and saying he's lost the people trust.
Yes.
And the government is seen as not working well, and some are proposing a new government to replace Netanyahu's party. So that is the challenges, and the at home and also in the Gaza Strip itself for the Israeli regime.
And talking about this is very interesting, because if you look on social media, we could see videos of people protesting in front of Benjamin Netanyahu's house to step down as a prime minister.
Correct.
And Doctor, I would like to touch again on just now you mentioned about in the first question we talk about the consequences of this aggression towards Gaza. One thing that we can conclude from all this is that Israel's they are losing support. Not just from the government, but also its own people. Right. So after more than a month of continuous military actions in Gaza, and in light of the global campaign to boycott the Israel economy, what is the current state of the Israel's economy, and what are the notable economic impacts and challenges that the country is facing at this point?
Okay. The war in Gaza has had a significant economic repercussions on Israel. Here there are some key points regarding the current condition of Israeli economy. During this war, for a start, the Israel economy starts in a very strong position and has shown remarkable resilience, even in the periods of strife and outright war in the past. Israel's almost 500 billion economy is one of the most developed in the Middle East, in spite of its decades of long-standing conflict with the Palestinians. The country has low debt, current account surplus, and high foreign exchange reserve in their banks. So the war in Gaza is hitting the Israeli economy and putting its resilience to a test. The Bank of Israel has cut its growth forecast, and the World Bank warns that the world economy is at a tipping point, or is at a very dangerous juncture, whereby the local currency, the shekel, Israeli local currency, has recently hit a 15-year low. The benchmark of its stock index has experienced a decline of approximately 10% in the current year. And Israel tech industry, we know Israel is a tech giant,
Yes.
which has been a significant driver of its economy, was facing challenges even before the commencement of the conflict. Credit rating agencies, including Fitch Rating, Moody's, Investors Service, and S&P, have issued warnings in recent days, suggesting that an escalation of the conflict might lead to a downgrade of Israeli sovereign debt rating. And Israel's central bank has revised down its 2023 economic growth projection from 3% to only 2.3%, assuming that the conflict remains confined to the country's southern region, not to create a spillover effect to other parts of the country. And the amount of economic damage will depend on how long the Israeli reservist army is away from their jobs. So many of the Israelis' key employment sectors will continue uninterrupted during the war, due to the fact that they are heavily staffed with foreign workers. But now foreign workers are already fled the country as well. They don't really, the government has, but the government has promised to do a no limit spending to finance the war and to compensate household and businesses affected. Meaning this means a bigger budget deficit and a more debt that will be their burden. And the conflict has caused a temporary hit for the startup industry. We also know Israel also a giant for startup industry.
Yes.
But when soldiers return, so will investment and demand for this industry as well. So due to this, Israel's aggression in Gaza, oil prices have risen. Oil prices have risen about, I think, $5 a barrel since the start of the conflict, even though oil production doesn't seem to have been affected. Energy is the most important short-run issue, if we are talking about the global economy perspective. Yeah.
And before we go to the next question, I would like to ask your opinion, because from what you just said just now, there are people who are not sure whether boycott will do sufficient pressure towards Israel. In your opinion, does boycott works?
Like I mentioned, economic is also a complex phenomena, complexity as well. As a political maneuver, I think it works.
It works.
As a political pressure towards companies that doesn't really have the commitment to criticize Israel's aggression. I think it kind of works.
But away for the economy, it might take.
It might take some time.
It might take some time.
We can see how the market share of McDonald's, increase, even though we have some boycott on their product. But as a message to the international community or to international, citizens or even international industries, that we, the Muslims or those who are sympathy with the issue in Gaza, I think it kind of sending a very strong message. Yeah, it's just not just an economic strategy, but also a political strategy to send a strong message to these industry players who still strongly support Israel for that matter.
Interesting. And talking about this boycott, there is one country that is so close with Israel. United States. So I would like to ask, to what extent can the United States offer support to Israel in this ongoing aggression, especially when considering that the US is on the brink of upcoming election, and we could see that more and more people in the West, and especially in United States, their public sentiment appears to becoming lean towards supporting Palestine. So what's your opinion on that?
Okay. Regarding that, according to recent polls, most Americans believe that the US government should publicly express support for Israel in its conflict with Palestine. However, public opinions in the US or on the US policy towards Israeli-Palestinian issue remains divided along partisan lines, with an increasing majority of the Republicans wanting the United States to lean toward Israel, while a declining majority of the Democrats wants the United States to lean towards neither side. There are also notable generational and racial divides, with younger Americans and non-whites being less likely to support Israel. And they are, I think most of them are supporters for Democrats. So despite this, Americans continue to express more positive feelings towards the Israeli people, maybe than towards the Palestinian people. But as I mentioned, they are divided along generational or racial divides. In the poll, more respondents say that Biden's position on the Israeli-Palestinian issue makes them less likely to vote for Biden if the election were held today. So Biden's approval rating among Democrats has fallen to a point, to a very low point, according to the pollster Gallup. The party's worst assessment of the president since he took office. So Gallup cited Biden's immediate and decisive show of support for Israel as turning off some of the turning off some members of his own party. In terms of the extent to which US can offer support to Israel, it is important to note that the US government has historically been a strong ally for Israel, providing military and economic aid. Since 1960s, the United States has been very strong supporter of Israel. It has played a key role in promoting good relations between Israel and its neighboring Arab states, Jordan, Lebanon, Egypt, and so on. And in 1999, the US government entered into a memorandum of understanding pledging to supply Israel with minimum 2.6 billion in military aid each year for the subsequent decade. And this annual commitment was increased year by year up until in 2019 they committed to provide Israel 3.8 billion support annually. So however, the US government must also consider the potential consequences of its actions, including the impact of its relationship with other countries in the region, in the West Asia, and the potential for further conflict. So we are clear that the US and also Iranian government and other country in that region, they don't want this thing to escalate further. They don't want to have the the Third World War, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So ultimately, any decision regarding US support for Israel will likely be influenced by a variety of factors, including public opinion, political consideration, and also strategic interests. We have seen that the White House has cautioned Israeli government against them to occupy Gaza. They prevent Israeli government to occupy Gaza, and the White House has maintained that it does not believe Israeli forces should occupy Gaza, as it is not good for Israel or the Israeli people.
Yes.
So we have seen that President Joe Biden has warned against Israel for them not to occupy Gaza, and pressing for a two-state solution with the Palestinian Authority taking control, and so on and so forth. And researchers nowadays, analysts are saying that now President Joe Biden is confronting the limits of his leverage in the Gaza issue, which will define his presidency term, and it will be that would be the reason why for days his administration has been urging Benjamin Netanyahu to allow for humanitarian pauses, and I think nowadays the Israeli agreed for 4 hours, humanitarian pauses a day.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that will be the situation in the United States, and to what extent they could support this war. Yeah.
And going back to your answer on the first question, you did mention about the China involvement, right? So one of that China's involvement in this political situation could somehow spread its influence towards the region. And talking about that on a broader scale, how do you perceive the implications of the recent occupation of Gaza for destabilizing the global political landscape? And just now I mentioned about China, how does it has potentially enticing another actors to expand their influence in the region?
Right, I think the Israelis aggression on Gaza has the potential to trigger regional crisis, and it has also impacted the global power balance right now. The conflict or the aggressions is stretching the resources of the United States and Europe. Simultaneously, it is easing pressure on Russia. That is kind of like an unintended consequence of the war, and the war in Gaza can make Ukraine's conflict seems like a more localized European issue. Ukraine's survival depends a lot on international support, so distraction from struggle are unfavorable for them. So this Israelis aggression on Gaza distracted our focus on the issue in Ukraine. So an escalation of this war, potentially involving Iran, could impact oil prices, making it more expensive for the West to maintain sanction on Russian energy. And this situation is creating new opportunities for China, as I mentioned to you before. And the conflict has exposed deep fault lines within France, Germany, the United Kingdom, fueling fragmentation among the EU member states. After Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, we can see European countries displayed strong unity of condemning the action. But currently, EU leaders are dividing their attention among Ukraine, Nagorno-Karabakh in Azerbaijan, and Gaza. And you can see during the UN General Assembly vote on a humanitarian ceasefire resolution in Gaza, UN member states voted in 3 different ways, indicating a lack of consensus or unity within the EU themselves. Additionally, there are some unprecedented responses from Western leaders due to public pressure, as I mentioned to you. For instance, Emmanuel Macron from France urged Israel to halt its retaliatory bombing campaign, citing that the deaths of women and children in Gaza. He emphasized that the lack of legitimacy for those deaths and called for immediate ceasefire. Even though after that he made a phone call to the Israeli president, and explain his statement. But his first statement on criticizing Israel delivered a very strong message that Western leaders has shifted their side. We can see how the case of Suella Berman, the former UK Home Secretary, was removed from her position, reportedly due to her controversial comment about pro-Palestinian protesters. And I think government have advocated for further action against pro-Palestinian marchers and accused the police of bias in handling political protests. And her remarks garnered criticism from both the Conservative Party and the Labour Party, leading to her dismissal by Prime Minister Rishi Sunak in a cabinet reshuffle very recently. And then the war has also caused political polarization, deepening war from the conflict, and has had a global impact, including the global economy, oil, food, and so on and so forth. The conflict has also ramification across the region, causing grievous harm to civilian and threatening stability across the Middle East. But China, in contrast to its neutrality, following Russia's invasion of Ukraine, promptly showed support for the Palestinian cause. Mind you, China never used the term terrorist on Hamas. They never used that term on Hamas.
Interesting.
And Beijing's long-term objective is to degrade Washington's global standing by capitalizing on sympathy for Palestinians worldwide. In a statement, I think this in turn helps win backing for Chinese position on core issues, like Xinjiang in Taiwan, and so on and so forth. And China's response is now integrated into its engagement with countries in the global south. Global south country. The global south, most of the global south country are in support towards Palestinian cause, and it is more evident than before when more countries in the region sever their relation with Israel, such as Bolivia, South Africa, and so on and so forth. And a statement by a fellow at Chatham House in London, Ahmad Badri, he mentioned that many global South nations are sympathetic to Palestine, and the war is therefore an issue that China can use to mobilize support for its leadership among the developing countries. Nowadays, Chinese diplomats are eager to emphasize Western double standard in the upcoming weeks and months, particularly in the context of in the context of Israelis' aggression in Gaza. I think that would be one of the unexpected or unintended consequences of this war, whereby Chinese, stands to benefits or gain a lot from this war.
And as we are reaching the end of this conversation, indeed, we as a fellow Muslims, we are deeply saddened by the tragic loss of more than 10,000 Palestinian civilians in the Gaza, and of course, sure that the number will keep rising. So, at this current situation, what should we do to maintain hope for Allah's help?
I think maybe I can draw reference in responding to this question. Maybe I can draw reference to Surah Al-Isrhl, verse number 4 until number 7. Surah Al-Isrhl is also known as Surah Bani Israel. So in this surah, from verse number the 4th verse until the 7th verse, it describe how the children of Israel were forewarned in their scripture that they would cause corruption in the earth twice and become excessively proud of their own, atrocities and so on and so forth. When the first warning came through, powerful servant was sent against them, who entered their homes as a fulfilled promise by God, and will, however, they were later granted a return victory and blessed with wealth, offsprings and increased manpower. So the message conveyed here is that their action would have consequences, whether good or evil, and their fate would be tied to their own choices, as mentioned in this verse. And ultimately, their enemies will be sent to bring sadness and destruction, similar to the previous entry, similar to their previous entry into the Temple of Jerusalem. So, modern scholars like Sheikh Sha'rawi and so on and so forth, they said, the first atrocity made by the children of Israel is when they break they breach their promise with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the response towards their atrocity or the aggression by that time was in the war of Khaybar by that time, whereby the Prophet and his companions managed to defeated the Jews by that time. And according to these modern scholars like Sheikh Sha'rawi and so on and so forth, they said that the second atrocity made by the children of Israel is when they announced in Basel, Switzerland, the formation of a Zionist nation or Zionist states. By that time, the Israel is not in existence yet, but they promote the idea of this state that will materialize in 50 years after the announcement. For the scholars like Sheikh Sha'rawi, I think they said that was the second atrocity or the second mistake done by the children of Israel in the modern time. And some have argued that what we are witnessing nowadays is the plan of Allah, to send those who the enemies of the children of Israel, that will bring them sadness and destruction on what they have been doing to others. So as Muslim, we cannot lose hope in Allah that He will realize His promise to give victories to those who side with truth and on the right path. And it's very interesting, according to John B. Altman of the Center of Strategic and International Studies, in his article entitled Israel Could Lose. That is the title of that article. It is quite possible that the war in Gaza will be the first war in Israel's history that the army has fought and probably lost. So Hamas, much like other organizations, defines military victory in terms of achieving long-term political goals. For Hamas, victory isn't measured in 1 or 5 years, but in decades of struggle that aim to foster Palestinian unity and increase Israel's isolation. So Arab states increasingly distance themselves from normalization, and the global South increasingly align with the Palestinian cause. European countries react strongly to the Israeli army's action, and heated debate in the US emerged regarding Israel, and fracturing the bipartisan support that Israeli has enjoyed since before. So I think that would be our hope, that victory, inshallah, will be granted with those who side with the truth, inshallah.
Inshallah, soon Palestine will be free. With that being said, I would like to thank Dr. Badri for his insight onto this topic beyond the battlefield, the Gaza crisis and its unintended consequences to Israel. We hope that today's sharing will be beneficial to those who are listening to us either through radio or even through our social media. And again, Doctor, thank you for being with us in the studio. Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
And dear listeners, if you miss any part of the show, you can watch it again through our Facebook page, IKIM FM, and on YouTube, IKIM Media. We'll be back next week with more interesting topics, so don't change the radio station. Stay tuned to IKIM FM, Inspirasi Infora Islami.